Welcome back to the Patrick Regan Show. Just a little Red Hot Chili Peppers. Micah doing a good job with the music in there. Jay, didn't Jay leave you a list, or are you just coming up with that stuff? Oh, we'll say he's coming up with it. All right. This segment, being how I'm on the radio and have a radio show, imagine that. I frequently get asked my opinion about what is happening in the news and about what I think about whatever's going on. And, of course, this IRS story has just been dominating most of the conversations I've been having this week. I wanted to play a couple of clips here. Here's what Inspector General J. Russell George had to say about it Friday, in case you missed the testimony there. It's been all over the news. If you haven't seen it, well, you're just not paying attention, I guess. But here's a clip, what he had to say real quickly about the whole IRS thing here.
In closing, our audit found clear evidence that each of the three allegations were correct. Was the IRS using inappropriate criteria in its review of organizations applying for tax-exempt status? Yes. Was the IRS delaying their applications? Yes. And finally, did the IRS ask inappropriate and unnecessary questions of applicants? Again, yes.
Here is what outgoing IRS Commissioner Stephen Miller, he said that partially in response to that.
I do not believe that partisanship motivated the people who engaged in the practices described in the Treasury Inspector General's report.
Oh, okay. So if you're sorting IRS nonprofit applications on the basis of partisan words, then that's the definition of not discriminating by being partisan. So I guess using that same line of logic, if you sort applications based on whether they're female, then that's not being sexist. Or sorting on the basis of they're black or Hispanic, that's not being racist. The fact of the matter is, if these applications had been sorted using liberal keywords, and this was a Republican president, the media would be howling and calling for the president's resignation. And the very hypocrisy of them is so glaring that everyone sees it. That's why no one is watching or listening to these news people anymore. Even Nancy Pelosi got in on the act with these comments. Now, I don't know if you've caught these, but she has guts.
They make so much of these issues because this president is such a great president. They will use the IRS. They will use the AP. They will use these as, again, subterfuges, evasions of what the American people want us to do here.
Wow. And last but not least, of course, President Obama came out and he gave this statement about just this whole mess, about everything that's been going on.
I know nothing, I see nothing, and I say nothing.
Have you noticed how the president and his people, including his apologists in the media, they're trying to spin the excuse that the government is so big he couldn't have possibly known what was going on. Now, interestingly enough, we don't accept this answer from the private sector. When there's an industrial accident, the media start crucifying the CEO, saying he should have known about whatever problems they had been having at this or that plant. Or if someone sues the company on a civil rights complaint, the CEO should have known about the atmosphere of intimidation that prevailed in the office. Even the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, that requires top management. They must now individually certify the accuracy of financial information issued by a company. It also mandates that senior executives take individual responsibility for the accuracy and completeness of corporate financial reports. But all that seems to be lost when it comes to the public sector government. When something happens there, it seems no one above the person being actually charged seems to have any knowledge of anything. In fact, they try their best just to cover everything up.
Okay, people, move along. There's nothing to see here.
Yes. Lois Lerner, she heads the IRS division that oversees tax-exempt groups. This whole thing started when she acknowledged this issue at a conference sponsored by the American Bar Association. Now, she confirmed that these organizations were singled out because they included the words Tea Party or Patriot in their applications for tax-exempt status. Now, in some cases, groups were even asked for their list of donors. Now, she says, Ms. Lerner says, that was wrong. That was absolutely incorrect. It was insensitive and it was inappropriate. And, of course, the IRS would like to apologize for that. So it's almost like they're saying, hey, we're sorry we couldn't dig up any dirt on your nonprofit's donors to pass on to Acorn. Yeah, well, we shouldn't have done that, and we're sorry. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. If you could just go ahead and make sure you do that from now on, that would be great.
Exactly, yeah. If you could just be sure and pull those applications listing Tea Party or Patriot on them, yeah, that would be great. Ms. Lerner also said the practice was initiated by low-level workers in Cincinnati, same thing the president's saying, and was motivated by political bias, or was not motivated by political bias. So, again, it's not motivated by political bias. So, flagging applications for having political words in the application is not politically motivated.
What are you people? On dope?
Yes, exactly. A dozen Republican senators wrote to the IRS in March of 2012, and they expressed concern about the various accounts that the IRS inquiries were perceived to be excessive. And at that time, the IRS Commissioner Douglas Shulman told Congress that IRS was not targeting groups based on their political views. Absolutely no targeting. And he said this kind of back and forth is what happens to people who apply for tax-exempt status. So here was this commissioner telling a congressional committee that nothing like what has now been reported was happening. Now, this is why it is so dangerous for the government to be constantly accumulating so much information about the citizens of this country. It can be used for bad things. Yet we have people who will gladly say, hey, I'm not doing anything wrong. I have nothing to hide. But let their political enemies find something. Or maybe they just get caught up in a general search of government databases. Let that sort of thing happen, and good people, well, they get harassed out of politics, out of backing legislation, out of voting a certain way, whatever. The whole scandal, though, is just a symptom of a much bigger problem. Let's say you got a cough and congestion, and it's because you have tuberculosis. But the doctor tells you, hey, let's get rid of that cough with some cough suppressant. That's just a symptom. The underlying sickness is much bigger. Same thing with this IRS story. That whole agency needs to be shut down. That's the sickness, the agency. All these other scandals are just symptoms of the bigger problem, too much government. And the Tea Party and other conservative groups from complaining about questionnaires from the IRS, do you have any idea how much information the government has on you? And it's gearing up to collect even more. Again, you can check our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Patrick Riggins Show. Go back a couple of weeks, listen to the segment on the National Security Agency's the big new data center outside Salt Lake City. If you don't want to do that, you can just Google it as well, NSA Data Center. The government is right now collecting your emails, your Facebook information, everything without warrants, trampling on the constitutional rights of Americans. This IRS thing is a drop in the bucket. The government knows that. Congress knows that. Heck, even the president knows that. But they'll have hearings. Maybe some people will lose their jobs. Someone may even go to prison. And the people of this country will say, hey, isn't that great? That scandal was discovered and those people were made to pay. The IRS got a spanking. We sure showed them. Now I can go back to not paying attention to the other huge, massive amounts of data the government is actively collecting on me, violating my privacy rights. You see, that's what people in government will say. You see, you can trust us again. We reformed that agency. We stop this sort of thing dead in its tracks. In the meantime, the huge data center complex in Salt Lake City is being built and brought online. But we aren't going to point that out. Just go back to watching television and being ignorant of the bigger story happening. You know, we're like absentee landowners. We check in from time to time whenever we hear there's a problem. Then we go back to our homes and ignore the land managers mining all the gold out of our land and selling it, stealing from us while we tend to our daily lives. The only problem is when we check back after a few years, we discover our land's been robbed and the people who did it are gone. That's exactly what's happening in our country today, right now, as you listen to this show. That's why you simply have to start taking action to stop all this, to reverse this huge decline we're speeding down. Otherwise, we're going to wake up one day and nothing will be left. The Fed has all but trashed our currency, and when they are done and our dollar collapses, everyone will be looking around and wondering what happened. All right, we're up on the last break here on the Patrick Regan Show. Boy, this show just flies by. When we come back, we'll find something to talk about. Maybe I'll pick up a little bit on that drug war we started with last week. When we come back here on the Patrick Regan Show, join us in a couple of minutes.